Okay, so we already know that the nervous system provides very fast point-to-point coordination between different organs, isn't it? But here is the problem. This coordination is short-lived, and more importantly, nerve fibers cannot reach every single cell in our body. So think about it. How do we maintain continuous regulation of cellular functions? That is where hormones come in. You see, we need a special coordination system for this. So basically, the neural system and the endocrine system work together to regulate all physiological functions in the body. Now, endocrine glands are special. They are ductless glands, meaning they do not have ducts like salivary glands do. Their secretions are called hormones. And what are hormones exactly? They are non-nutrient chemicals that act as intercellular messengers, and they are produced only in trace amounts. Clear so far? So the endocrine system is made up of endocrine glands and hormone-producing tissues. The main organized endocrine bodies are, listen carefully, pituitary, pineal, thyroid, adrenal, pancreas, parathyroid, thymus, and gonads, which means testis in males and ovary in females. These are the key players. But you know what? Some other organs also produce hormones. Yes, organs like the gastrointestinal tract, liver, kidney, and heart also produce hormones. So the endocrine system is not just about glands, gills, it involves many tissues throughout the body. Every part of this system has a specific role. We will go through each one in detail. Alright, the hypothalamus sits at the basal part of the diencephalon, which is in the forebrain, okay? It contains special neurosecretory cells called nuclei. And what do these cells do? They produce hormones that regulate the synthesis and secretion of pituitary hormones. Basically, the hypothalamus is like the CEO of the endocrine system only. Now, here is the key. The hypothalamus produces two types of hormones. First, there are releasing hormones which stimulate the pituitary to release its hormones. Second, there are inhibiting hormones which stop the pituitary from releasing hormones. Let me give you examples. Gonadotrophin releasing hormone or GnRH stimulates the pituitary to release gonadotrophins. On the other hand, somatostatin inhibits the release of growth hormone. See how this balance works? So how do these hypothalamic hormones actually reach the pituitary? Listen, the hormones are made in the hypothalamic neurons and they travel down through the axons. Then they are released from the nerve endings. From there, they enter what we call the portal circulatory system. This is a special set of blood vessels that directly connects the hypothalamus to the anterior pituitary. But the posterior pituitary is different. It is under direct neural regulation through nerve fibers from the hypothalamus. Two different systems, simple. The pituitary gland is a small gland about the size of a pea, and it sits in a bony cavity called the sella turcica. It is connected to the hypothalamus by a stalk. Now, the pituitary has two main parts. The first is the adenohypophysis, which has two regions, pars distalis and pars intermedia. The pars distalis is also called the anterior pituitary. This is super important, right? So the anterior pituitary produces 6 main hormones. First is growth hormone or GH, which controls body growth. Second is prolactin, which regulates the growth of mammary glands and milk formation. Third is TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, which controls the thyroid gland. Fourth is ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone, which controls the adrenal gland. And then we have two gonadotrophins, LH and FSH, which control reproduction. These are the 6 key hormones from anterior pituitary, clear? Now the pars intermedia produces a hormone called MSH nemelanocyte stimulating hormone. But in humans, this region is almost fused with pars distalis. The posterior pituitary, also called neurohypophysis or pars nervosa, is different. It does not produce hormones itself. Instead, it stores and releases two hormones, mazopressin, which are actually made in the hypothalamus and then transported down through nerve axons to the posterior pituitary. So what happens when growth hormone levels are wrong? If there is too much GH during childhood, you get gigantism, abnormal growth of the entire body. If there is too little GH, you get pituitary dwarfism, stunted growth. But here is the interesting part. If a person develops excess GH as an adult, especially in middle age, the situation is different. The body cannot grow taller because the growth plates have already closed. Instead, the bones become thicker and facial features enlarge. This condition is called acromegaly and it causes severe disfigurement. The problem is that acromegaly develops very slowly, so it often goes undetected for years. And if it is not treated, it can lead to serious complications and even premature death. So let me explain these three hormones quickly. Prolactin acts on the mammary glands and controls their growth and milk formation. Remember, this is especially important in lactating females. TSH means thyroid stimulating hormone. It goes to the thyroid gland and stimulates the production and release of thyroid hormones. And ACTH means adrenocorticotropic hormone, MIC. It targets the adrenal cortex and stimulates the production of steroid hormones called glucocorticoids. Each one has a very specific job, no? Okay, so LH and FSH are called gonadotrophins. Let us start with males. In males, LH stimulates the synthesis and secretion of hormones called androgens from the testis. FSH and these androgens together regulate spermatogenesis, the production of sperms. This is how male reproduction is controlled. In females, the story is different. LH induces ovulation, it triggers the release of a mature egg follicle. After ovulation, LH also maintains a structure called the corpus luteum. FSH stimulates the growth and development of the ovarian follicles, the structures containing the eggs. So these two hormones work together to control the female reproductive cycle. Simple? So MSH stands for melanocyte stimulating hormone. It acts on melanocytes, which are the cells that contain melanin and give color to our skin. By stimulating these cells, MSH regulates our skin pigmentation. Now in humans, the pars intermedia is almost fused with the anterior pituitary, but MSH still does its job. Oxytocin is a different hormone released from the posterior pituitary. It acts on the smooth muscles throughout the body and stimulates their contraction. In females, this is super important during childbirth. Oxytocin causes vigorous contractions of the uterus to push the baby out. Also, oxytocin stimulates the milk to be ejected from the mammary glands. So this one hormone has two very important jobs in reproduction. Vasopressin, also known as ADH or antidiuretic hormone, comes from the posterior pituitary gland. It works on the kidneys to help them reabsorb water and electrolytes in the nephron's distal tubules. This process reduces water loss in urine, which is why it's called antidiuretic Me. It stops the body from losing too much water. Now, if something goes wrong with ADH production or release, the kidneys lose their ability to conserve water. Water just pours out through the urine, causing severe dehydration. This disease is called diabetes insipidus. Do not confuse it with diabetes mellitus, which is related to blood sugar. These are two completely different diseases. The pineal gland is a small gland sitting on the dorsal side of the forebrain. It secretes a hormone called melatonin. And what does melatonin do? It plays a very important role in regulating your 24-hour body rhythm, what we call the circadian rhythm. It maintains the normal sleep-wake cycle, controls body temperature cycles, and influences your metabolism. Essentially, melatonin is your body's internal clock. But there is more. Melatonin also influences your skin pigmentation, the darkness of your skin. It affects your menstrual cycle in females. And interestingly, it even influences your defense capability, your immune system. All of these are coordinated with the 24-hour rhythm. So this small hormone is responsible for so many daily functions. Okay, so the thyroid gland has two lobes, one on each side of the trachea, the windpipe. These two lobes are connected together by a thin piece of connective tissue called the isthmus. The thyroid is made up of many follicles, which are like tiny sacs. Each follicle is lined with follicular cells that produce the thyroid hormones. It is an interesting structure. The follicular cells of the thyroid produce two hormones, tetraiodothyronine, which we call thyroxine or T4, and triiodothyronine or T3. These are very important. Now, here is a critical point. Iodine is absolutely essential for the synthesis of these hormones. You need iodine in your diet for the thyroid to work properly. What do these thyroid hormones do? They regulate your basal metabolic rate, basically, how much energy your body burns when you are at rest. They support the formation of red blood cells. They control how your body metabolizes carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. They maintain water and electrolyte balance. And very importantly, they support the development and maturation of the central nervous system. This is why thyroid hormones are so critical for proper growth and development. So if you do not have enough iodine in your diet, what happens? The thyroid cannot make thyroid hormones at the normal rate. This causes hypothyroidism, low thyroid hormone levels. Now the body detects this problem and sends signals to the thyroid saying, make more hormones. So the thyroid tries to grow bigger, thinking that a larger gland can produce more hormones. But without iodine, it cannot. This enlargement of the thyroid is called goiter. You see it as a swollen neck. This condition is easily prevented with iodized salt. Now this is very serious. If the mother has hypothyroidism during pregnancy, especially in the early stages, the baby does not develop properly. This condition is called cretinism. The baby will have stunted growth, short stature, mental retardation, and low intelligence quotient, abnormal skin development, and even deaf mutism. The baby cannot hear or speak properly. These are permanent problems because thyroid hormones are critical for proper development of the baby's brain and body during pregnancy. This is why it is so important for pregnant women to have adequate iodine. In adult women, if the thyroid stops working properly, if there is hypothyroidism, one of the problems that develops is irregular menstrual cycles. The thyroid hormones are needed to maintain the proper balance of reproductive hormones. Without enough thyroid hormone, that balance is disrupted and the periods become irregular. This is one more reason why the thyroid is called the master gland it affects. Now let us talk about the opposite problem. If there is thyroid cancer or if nodules develop in the thyroid, the hormone production goes into overdrive. The thyroid produces too much hormone. This is hyperthyroidism and it seriously disrupts normal body functions. There is a specific type of hyperthyroidism called exophthalmic goiter, also known as Graves' disease. What is special about it? First, the thyroid gland enlarges, you see a swollen neck. Second, the eyeballs protrude outward, literally bulging out of the sockets. Third, the metabolic rate increases dramatically, so the person burns calories very rapidly and loses weight. These are very visible changes that make this disease easy to recognize. Now, the thyroid produces another hormone besides T4 and T3. It is called thyrocalcitonin or TCT. What does this hormone do? It regulates blood calcium levels specifically by decreasing them. So if your blood calcium goes too high, TCT lowers it back down. This hormone works together with another hormone from the parathyroid gland to keep blood calcium in the perfect range. We will learn more about that next. Okay, so behind the thyroid gland are 4 small parathyroid glands, 2 in each lobe of the thyroid. These tiny glands produce parathyroid hormone or PTH. Here is the clever part. The secretion of PTH is regulated by the amount of calcium in the blood. If calcium is low, the parathyroids release more PTH. If calcium is high, they release less. It is a perfect feedback system. PTH is called a hypercalcemic hormone B. That means it raises blood calcium. How does it do this? First, it acts on the bones. It stimulates the breaking down and dissolution of bone mineral avoca. We call this bone resorption. This releases calcium from the bones into the blood. But that is not all. PTH also acts on the kidneys. It stimulates the reabsorption of calcium in the renal tubules, so less calcium is lost in the urine. And third, PTH increases the absorption of calcium from the food you eat in the intestines. So it works three ways that it pulls calcium from bones, stops the kidneys from losing calcium, and helps the intestines absorb more calcium. All three mechanisms raise blood calcium levels. Together with TCT from the thyroid, PTH maintains perfect calcium balance in the body. The thymus gland is located between your lungs, behind the breastbone or sternum. It is a lobular structure. Now, why is this gland so important? It plays a major role in the development of your immune system. Everything related to fighting infections involves this gland. The thymus secretes hormones called thymosins. These hormones are critical for the differentiation of T lymphocytes, special immune cells that provide cell-mediated immunity. This is your body's first line of defense. Additionally, thymosins promote the production of antibodies for humoral immunity. So the thymus trains your immune cells. Now here is the problem. As you get older, the thymus gland shrinks and degenerates. This means less thymosin is produced. The result? Elderly people have weaker immune responses and are more susceptible to infections. This is one reason why older people get sick more easily. Alright, so on top of each kidney, you have an adrenal gland. The adrenal gland has two parts. The inner part is called the adrenal medulla and the outer part is called the adrenal cortex. These two parts are like two separate glands with completely different functions. Let me explain both. First, let me tell you what happens when the adrenal cortex fails. If the cortex does not produce enough hormones, a disease called Addison's disease develops. The person develops weak carbohydrate metabolism, which means they cannot produce energy properly. They experience acute weakness and severe fatigue. It is a serious condition. The adrenal medulla produces two hormones, adrenaline, also called epinephrine, and noradrenaline, also called norepinephrine. Together, these are called catecholamines. You know what? They are called emergency hormones or fight-or-flight hormones. Why? Because they are released very quickly whenever you face stress or an emergency. What do these hormones do to your body? Think about when you see something scary. Immediately, you become more alert, your pupils dilate so you see better, the hair on your body stands up. That is called piloerection. You start sweating, your heart beats faster and stronger, your breathing becomes rapid. All of this happens within seconds. These are the immediate effects. But there is more happening at the metabolic level. These emergency hormones stimulate glycogenolysis, the breakdown of stored glycogen into glucose. This raises your blood sugar rapidly, providing energy for action. They also stimulate lipolysis, the breakdown of your fat stores, to provide additional energy. All your stored energy is mobilized. Additionally, catecholamines stimulate proteolysis, the breakdown of proteins. So your body is breaking down glycogen, fats, and proteins all at the same time to provide maximum energy. Every energy store is mobilized, every system is prepared for action. This is your body's survival mechanism. Incredible, no? The adrenal cortex has three layers. From inside to outside, they are called zona reticularis, zona fasciculata, and zona glomerulosa. Each layer produces steroid hormones. All of these hormones are grouped under the name corticoids. Now, these corticoids are divided into two main types based on their function. The first type is glucocorticoids. These are involved in carbohydrate metabolism. The main glucocorticoid is cortisol. The second type is mineralocorticoids. These regulate water and electrolyte balance. The main mineralocorticoid is aldosterone. Remember these names? They are very important. Cortisol is the main glucocorticoid and it does many things. First, it stimulates gluconeogenesis. That means it tells the liver to make glucose from non-carbohydrate sources. It stimulates lipolysis, the breakdown of fats. It stimulates proteolysis, the breakdown of proteins. So it is breaking down your body's reserves to raise blood glucose and energy levels. But it also inhibits your cells from taking up and using glucose. Think about it, the body is preparing for a stressful situation where you need quick energy. Beyond metabolism, cortisol does more. It is involved in maintaining your heart and blood vessel function. It maintains kidney function. Here is something interesting. Cortisol produces anti-inflammatory reactions. That means it reduces inflammation. But this is a double-edged sword because it also suppresses your immune response. Too much cortisol for too long can weaken your immunity. Cortisol also stimulates the production of red blood cells. So when you are stressed, cortisol does many things to prepare your body. Aldosterone is the main mineralocorticoid. Where does it work? In the kidneys, specifically in the renal tubules. What does it do? It stimulates the reabsorption of sodium ions and water, so less of these are lost in the urine. At the same time, it stimulates the excretion of potassium and phosphate ions. This is a balancing act. What is the overall result of aldosterone's actions? It maintains the balance of electrolytes in your blood, sodium, potassium, phosphate. It maintains your blood volume at the right level. It maintains osmotic pressure, how much water stays in your blood versus your tissues. And all of this helps maintain your blood pressure. So aldosterone is responsible for keeping your internal environment stable. Now, the adrenal cortex produces one more type of hormone, small amounts of androgenic steroids. These are male hormones similar to testosterone. Even though the main source of testosterone in males is the testis, the adrenal cortex also contributes. What is their role? They stimulate hair growth, specifically axial hair on the body trunk, pubic hair, and facial hair. This is especially important during puberty when these secondary sexual characteristics develop. The pancreas is special. It is both an exocrine gland making digestive juices and an endocrine gland making hormones. The endocrine part is called the islets of Langerhans. In a normal pancreas, there are about 1 to 2 million of these islets. They seem small. They represent only 1 to 2% of the total pancreatic tissue, but they are incredibly important. Inside each islet, there are two main cell types. Alpha cells produce a hormone called glucagon. Beta cells produce a hormone called insulin. These two hormones work together to control blood glucose levels. They are like opposing teams on a soccer field. One raises glucose, the other lowers it. Glucagon is a peptide hormone. It is made by the alpha cells. Where does it work? Mainly on the liver. What does it do? It stimulates glycogenolysis. That means it tells the liver to break down its stored glycogen into glucose. This glucose is released into the blood, raising blood glucose levels. When blood glucose is high, we call it hyperglycemia. But glucagon does not stop there. It also stimulates gluconeogenesis, the liver, making brand new glucose from non-carbohydrate sources like proteins and fats. Additionally, it reduces how much glucose your cells can take up and use. So glucagon does everything possible to raise and maintain blood glucose. That is why we call it a hyperglycemic hormone. Insulin is also a peptide hormone made by the beta cells. It has a completely opposite role from glucagon. Insulin acts mainly on liver cells and fat cells. What does it do? It enhances how much glucose these cells can take up from the blood. It increases how much glucose they can use. So glucose moves rapidly from the blood into these cells. What is the result? Blood glucose levels drop because glucose is moving from the blood into cells. We call this hypoglycemia. Additionally, insulin stimulates glycogenesis, the conversion of glucose into glycogen for storage. So glucose is both being used by cells and stored as glycogen. That is why insulin lowers blood glucose. So insulin and glucagon are like opposing teams. When blood glucose is high, insulin is released to lower it. When blood glucose is low, glucagon is released to raise it. Together, they maintain the perfect blood glucose level. This is beautiful coordination glucose homeostasis. When something goes wrong with insulin or when blood glucose stays too high for too long, diabetes mellitus develops. Diabetes mellitus is a complex disease caused by either insulin deficiency, not enough insulin being made, or insulin resistance SNP, the cells not responding to insulin. The result is that blood glucose stays abnormally high. What happens with prolonged high blood glucose? First, glucose spills into the urine. The kidneys cannot reabsorb all of it. Second, and this is serious, the body starts breaking down fats and proteins for energy, which produces harmful compounds called ketone bodies. These ketone bodies make the blood acidic, and this can be very dangerous. Fortunately, we have treatment. Diabetic patients are successfully treated with insulin therapy. By giving them the insulin their body lacks or cannot use, we can bring blood glucose back to normal levels and prevent the serious complications. So, insulin therapy is a lifesaver for diabetic patients. In males, there are two testes located in the scrotal sac outside the body. The testis has two important jobs. It produces sperm for reproduction and it produces hormones. The testis is organized into seminiferous tubules where sperm are made, and around these tubules is stromal tissue. In the spaces between the tubules are special cells called Leydig cells or interstitial cells. These cells produce androgens, male hormones. The main androgen is testosterone. Testosterone is absolutely essential for male reproductive function and male sexual characteristics. Androgens do many things. First, they regulate the development and maturation of male accessory sex organs. These are structures like the epididymis, vas deferens, seminal vesicles, prostate gland, and urethra, all the plumbing involved in male reproduction. Without androgens, these structures do not develop properly. During puberty, androgens cause the development of secondary sexual characteristics. They stimulate muscle growth. Males develop bigger muscles. They cause facial hair to grow, pubic hair, and body hair. They increase aggressiveness. Males become more assertive. They lower the pitch of the voice. These are all the visible signs of puberty in males. Additionally, androgens play a huge role in spermatogenesis, the production of sperm. They act on the brain to control male sexual behavior and drive. And finally, androgens have anabolic effects. They build muscle and promote protein synthesis. This is why bodybuilders are concerned about anabolic steroids. Androgens build strength and muscle mass. In females, there are two ovaries located in the abdomen. The ovaries serve two purposes. First, they produce eggs. One egg is released during each menstrual cycle. Second, they produce hormones. The ovaries are made up of follicles which contain the developing eggs surrounded by stromal tissue. So where do these hormones come from? Estrogen is made by the growing follicles, the structures containing the developing eggs. But after the egg is released in ovulation, the remains of the follicle transform into something called the corpus luteum. The corpus luteum is the site where progesterone is produced. So the same structure produces different hormones at different stages of the cycle. Estrogen does many things. First, it stimulates the growth and activities of female secondary sex organs, all the structures involved in female reproduction. It stimulates the development of the follicles containing the eggs. It facilitates the cyclic ovulation process, the regular release of eggs. During puberty, estrogen causes the development of female secondary sexual characteristics. The voice becomes higher pitched. The breasts develop. Estrogen stimulates mammary gland development. The body develops a feminine shape. All of these changes are due to estrogen. Estrogen also affects the brain. It regulates female sexual behavior and affects mood. It influences how females respond reproductively to males. Essentially, estrogen controls the cyclical nature of female reproduction and the associated emotional and behavioral changes. Progesterone is the second important female hormone. It is produced by the corpus luteum after ovulation. What is its main job? To support pregnancy. Specifically, progesterone maintains the endometrium, the lining of the uterus. This is the tissue that nourishes the developing baby. Without progesterone, the uterus cannot support pregnancy. But progesterone does not stop at pregnancy. It also acts on the breasts. It stimulates the formation of alveoli maximal sac-like structures inside the breast tissue that store milk. It also stimulates milk secretion. So progesterone prepares the breasts for breastfeeding. Basically, progesterone is the hormone of motherhood, maximal. It enables both pregnancy and lactation. Did you know your heart produces a hormone? The atrial wall, the upper chambers of the heart, secretes a peptide hormone called ANF, which stands for atrial natriuretic factor. What does it do? It decreases blood pressure. Whenever blood pressure goes up too high, the atrial walls sense this stretch and release ANF. How does ANF lower blood pressure? It causes the blood vessels to dilate, to open up and relax. When vessels are more open, blood flows through them more easily and the pressure drops. So the heart produces a hormone that controls blood pressure. Is not that amazing? It is an automatic regulation system. The kidney is also an endocrine organ. Cells in the kidney called juxtaglomerular cells produce a hormone called erythropoietin or EPO. What does erythropoietin do? It stimulates the production of red blood cells. We call this erythropoiesis. When your body needs more oxygen carrying capacity, the kidneys sense this and release EPO. For example, if you go to high altitude where there is less oxygen in the air, your kidneys sense the low oxygen and release more EPO. This tells the bone marrow, make more red blood cells. The bone marrow responds by producing more RBCs to carry more oxygen. This is how your body adapts to altitude. Similarly, if there is blood loss, the kidneys release EPO to replace the lost red blood cells. Erythropoietin is essential for maintaining adequate blood oxygen levels. The gastrointestinal tract, your digestive system, produces 4 major hormones. Think of these as digestive coordinators. They are called gastrin, secretin, cholecystokinin or CCK, and gastric inhibitory peptide or GIP. Each one does a specific job in controlling digestion. Let me start with gastrin. Gastrin is produced in the stomach when food arrives. It acts on gastric glands and tells them to start making hydrochloric acid (HCl). This acid makes the stomach environment acidic, which is necessary for protein digestion. Gastrin also stimulates the release of pepsinogen, which is converted to pepsin, the enzyme that breaks down proteins. Secretin is the next hormone. It is released in the small intestine when acidic stomach contents arrive. Secretin acts on the pancreas and tells it to release water and bicarbonate ions. The bicarbonate neutralizes the stomach acid, making the small intestine less acidic. This is necessary for the proper environment in the small intestine where most digestion happens. CCK. Cholecystokinin acts on 2 organs. First, it acts on the pancreas and stimulates the release of pancreatic enzymes. These enzymes are needed to break down fats, proteins and carbohydrates in food. Second, CCK acts on the gallbladder and stimulates the release of bile juice. Bile breaks down fat into smaller droplets that can be digested. GIP stands for gastric inhibitory peptide. It does the opposite of the other hormones. It inhibits, it slows down gastric secretion and motility. Basically, it puts the brakes on stomach activity to prevent overload. So while gastrin accelerates digestion, GIP slows it down when needed. Together with gastrin, secretin and CCK, GIP fine-tunes the entire digestive process. Now, there are hormones produced by tissues that are not endocrine glands. These are called growth factors. Many different tissues throughout the body produce these growth factors. For example, fibroblasts in connective tissue produce growth factors, cells in skin produce them, cells in bone produce them, and cells in various organs produce them. What do growth factors do? They are essential for normal growth of tissues. They promote cell division cells multiplying. They promote cell growth cells getting larger. They promote cell differentiation cells becoming specialized. And very importantly, they are essential for tissue repair and regeneration, the ability to heal wounds and replace damaged tissue. Without growth factors, your body cannot repair itself properly. Here is the key to understanding how hormones work. Hormones work by binding to specific proteins called hormone receptors. These receptors are found only in the cells that the hormone affects. We call these target cells. Now, there are two main types of receptors. First, membrane-bound receptors. These are found on the surface of the cell, embedded in the cell membrane. Second, intracellular receptors. These are located inside the cell, mostly in the nucleus. Now here is what makes this system so precise. Each receptor is specific to only one hormone. A receptor for insulin will only bind insulin, not glucagon or any other hormone. This specificity is crucial. When a hormone binds to its specific receptor, a hormone receptor complex forms. This complex is what causes the cell to respond. The body is incredibly selective about which hormones affect which cells. So when a hormone binds to its receptor and the hormone receptor complex forms, what happens? Biochemical reactions start happening inside the target cell. Specific pathways are activated. A whole cascade of reactions is set off, like a chain reaction. What is the result? The target tissue's metabolism is regulated. How the tissue uses energy, how it processes nutrients, how it produces energy, all of this changes. These metabolic changes lead to changes in the tissue's physiological functions. So the hormone effect starts at the cellular level but results in observable changes in body function. Hormones can be divided into different chemical types based on what they are made of. The first type is peptide, polypeptide, and protein hormones. These are chain-like molecules. Examples include insulin, glucagon, all the pituitary hormones, and all the hypothalamic hormones. These are all made of amino acids linked together. The second type is steroids. These are lipid-based molecules. Examples are cortisol from the adrenal cortex, testosterone from the testis, and estradiol and progesterone from the ovary. The third type is iodothyronines, the thyroid hormones T4 and T3. The fourth type is amino acid derivatives. These are made from amino acids. Examples are epinephrine and norepinephrine, the catecholamines. Now let me explain the different mechanisms of hormone action. Start with peptide hormones. These are water-soluble, they dissolve in water and blood. Because they are water-soluble, they cannot cross the cell membrane. So these hormones work by binding to receptors on the outside of the cell. When the hormone binds to this surface receptor, something interesting happens. Instead of the signal going directly to the genes, the receptor complex generates second messengers inside the cell. These are chemicals like cyclic AMP-IP3 or calcium ions. These second messengers relay the hormone's message from the cell surface to the interior of the cell, where they trigger metabolic changes. Steroid hormones work very differently. These are lipid-soluble. They dissolve in lipids and fats, not water. Because they are lipid-soluble, they can cross the cell membrane. They can enter the target cell. Inside the cell, they bind to intracellular receptors, usually found in the nucleus. Here is the key difference. When the steroid hormone receptor complex forms in the nucleus, it does not generate second messengers. Instead, it directly interacts with the genome, with the DNA. The complex binds to specific regions of DNA and affects which genes are expressed. Some genes are turned on, some are turned off. This changes what proteins the cell makes, which changes what the cell does. Now here is the beautiful part. Individual hormone molecules cause small biochemical changes in individual cells. But think about this, one hormone, like insulin, is released into the blood and affects thousands of cells. Each of those cells responds by changing its metabolism. When you add up all those individual cellular responses, you get a measurable effect on the whole body. And then that is how hormones work. For example, take insulin. When you eat, insulin is released. It acts on liver cells, muscle cells, and fat cells. In all these cells, insulin's effects combine. The liver stores glucose as glycogen. Muscles take up glucose for energy. Fat cells store excess glucose as fat. All these changes together lower blood glucose back to normal. The cumulative effect is homeostasis, stable blood glucose. So small cellular changes add up to produce major physiological effects that keep your body running perfectly. Alright, let me summarize everything we have covered. The body has two coordination systems, the nervous system for rapid point-to-point communication and the endocrine system for continuous regulation via chemical messengers called hormones. Hormones are non-nutrient chemicals produced in trace amounts by endocrine glands and hormone-producing tissues. The major endocrine system includes organized glands like pituitary, thyroid, adrenal, and pancreas, plus tissues in the heart, kidney, and digestive tract. The hypothalamus is the master controller. It produces releasing hormones that stimulate the anterior pituitary and inhibiting hormones that suppress it. These hormones reach the pituitary through a portal circulatory system. The anterior pituitary produces 6 hormones: GH for growth, prolactin for milk, TSH for thyroid control, ACTH for adrenal control, and LH and FSH for reproduction. The posterior pituitary stores and releases oxytocin for contraction and ADH for water conservation. The pineal gland produces melatonin to regulate your sleep-wake cycle. The thyroid produces T3 and T4 for metabolism and TCT for calcium control. The parathyroid produces PTH to raise blood calcium. The thymus produces thymosins for immune development. The adrenal medulla produces adrenaline and noradrenaline for the fight-or-flight response. The adrenal cortex produces cortisol for metabolism and aldosterone for water electrolyte balance. The pancreas produces glucagon to raise blood glucose and insulin to lower it. They work as opposing teams. The testis produces androgens for male development and spermatogenesis. The ovary produces estrogen for female development and progesterone to support pregnancy. All these hormones are precisely coordinated. Beyond the major glands, the heart produces ANF to control blood pressure. The kidney produces erythropoietin for red blood cell production. The digestive tract produces 4 hormones that coordinate digestion. Even non-endocrine tissues produce growth factors for tissue repair. The entire body is a network of hormone-producing tissues working together. Hormones work through specific mechanisms. Peptide hormones bind to membrane receptors and use second messengers to relay signals. Steroid hormones penetrate cells and bind to intracellular receptors where they directly affect gene expression. In both cases, the hormone receptor binding triggers biochemical changes that alter the cell's metabolism and function. So here is the big picture. The neural and endocrine systems work together to regulate your entire body. Hormones control your metabolism, how you burn energy. They control your growth and development. They control your reproduction. They maintain homeostasis, the stable internal environment your cells need to survive. Every hormone has a specific target tissue and a specific function. Feedback mechanisms ensure that hormone levels stay in balance. When everything works properly, you have perfect chemical coordination. The cumulative effects of all these hormones and all these glands produce the healthy functioning body you have. That is chemical coordination and
Ready to start the day. Me eat, act, and you study way. Uploaded textbook, get summaries in a flash. Practice exams, flashcards, make your knowledge last. AI power boost for every ambitious mind. All in seconds, leave the stress behind. In labs here, yeah, you know.